the reason Barry Sanders is not considered the greatest of all time, no question, is because he was odd.
He was an introvert.
Yeah, he was an introvert, and he didn't care about those records.
Call me biased, call me a Detroit Lions, whatever you want. I don't care. I believe Barry and what Barry was, how he ran, was never done before, and it hasn't been done after, and I don't believe it'll ever be done again. The running back position, I believe, is the second largest gap in NFL history. I truly believe it's Barry Sanders, and you want to bring up Walter, Emmett, OJ, Jim Brown, great. All very good running backs. Adrian Peterson, LaDainian Tomlinson, great. Eric Dickerson. I believe Barry and what Barry was, how he ran, his, let's just call it what it is, his performance, his yards, his averages, will never be duplicated again in NFL history, and they never were anyways, before or after.
Well, his creativity.
And his creativity, the way he ran the ball is unbelievable. I truly believe the gap between 1 and 2 at the running back position is so significant, and the only gap bigger, in my opinion, is the quarterback conversation. We talk about wide receivers, Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson. We can have a conversation. You go to tight ends, Tony Gonzalez, Rob Gronkowski, Shannon Sharp, wherever you want to talk about.
We can who would disagree with you? William Sanders, the father of Barry Sanders. But he was a little bit off.
Yeah, I call me biased, call me a Detroit Lions, whatever you want. I don't care. I truly believe what Barry Sanders was during his time in the NFL was never done before, and it hasn't been done after, and I don't believe it'll ever be done again. I think he was a one-of-one type of player, just like I believe winning 7 Super Bowls as a quarterback is not a thing. That's just not a thing at all. If you win 2, you are a Hall of Famer first ballot, let alone just trying to get 1. So I think what Barry accomplished individually at that position, I think it's the greatest. And not only is he the greatest running back of all time, I think it is the second largest gap between 1 and 2 outside of the quarterback position.
And you know what? More people would acknowledge that if Barry's like the rest of us. If Barry was like the rest of us, they wouldn't have quit after 10 years. They would have wanted to put such a huge gap between him and Emmitt Thomas or Emmitt Smith that he couldn't catch him, but he didn't care. Barry was just the reason Barry Sanders is not considered the greatest of all time, no question, is because he was odd. He was odd from the standpoint
he was an introvert.
Yeah, he was an introvert, and he didn't care about those records. I mean, he had an opportunity to win the rushing title and decided not to play, or he held himself out of the game, took himself out of the game because the game was out of hand. There was no need. There was no need to rush the ball. But if he was like us, he would have 4,000 or 5,000 yards more.
He would have been the first back to get 20,000, in my opinion. It would have been done easily. And it would have been done with a career average right around 1,400 yards a season, which is ridiculous.
Right. Now, when we talk about normal running backs, we're like, hey, can he get 1,000 yards? For Barry, the barometer was 1,500. Is he going to get 1,500? Okay, he didn't do it. He only got 1,450 yards this year. Or, he's a guy that rushed for 2,000 yards in a season, which is almost impossible, particularly when everybody's looking at you, eyeballing you.
Barry Sanders ran for less than 1,300 yards one time in his career. And it was the year he only played 11 games, where he averaged 100 yards a game. He was on pace for a 1,600-yard season. Rookie year, 1,400 yards. Second year, 13. And then 15, 13, 11, 18, 15, 15, 2,000, and then 1,500 his last year. He averaged 100 yards a game on the ground. 99.8. Unbelievable. Again.
And I'll tell you something else that doesn't show up in a stat sheet. It was Sly Crooms, who was the offensive coordinator for the Lions, and we were criticizing the Lions after Barry left. How come you guys don't do more play action? And so we did a little film study, And so we watched ball fakes to Barry Sanders of what linebackers are doing. They're like, okay, hey, there is, okay, he doesn't have the ball. Now we can go play. But everybody froze. Everybody looked in that gap or in that box. Then he showed me probably 10, 15 plays post Barry Sanders. Linebackers are like, whatever. They didn't freeze. They just did their normal thing. And it showed how much respect the league had for him. Or the fear, if you want to say they feared him. So that was
a lot of Bo
eye-opening.
Jackson in the chat. A lot of Bo Jackson. And I would agree with you guys, but I think context in a career matters too. Right? Yeah, if he didn't injure his hip, we're probably not having this conversation. I think Bo Jackson could have been that to Barry Sanders. I think he could have been his kryptonite in terms of legacy, but yeah, sorry. For me, Terry, I believe there's a huge gap between 1 and 2 at running back. Really interesting that you brought up quarterback. I couldn't give you an answer today.
Number 2?
I don't believe I could give you an answer as who the greatest running back is, or excuse me, the second greatest quarterback is behind Tom Brady. That's difficult. There is probably I would say a list of 5 guys that I'm considering.
An interesting conversation I had. I was doing this story about Joe Montana. This was before Tom Brady being the best quarterback of all time. And San Francisco 49ers were at the Silverdome. So I'm talking to Jerry Rice, and I've gotten to talk to Jerry Rice several times, and then John Taylor. And they basically said, well, yeah, he's good, but you got to look at us too. If he didn't have us, he wouldn't be all that in a bag of chips. So even teammates deflected from Joe Montana, at least when I talked to him, that, yeah, he's good, but he wouldn't be great without us. He had John Taylor, he had Jerry Rice, and John Taylor, who a lot of people don't know about, was a very, very good wide receiver. His problem was he played at the same time as Jerry Rice, so he got overshadowed. But even Jerry Rice was like, yeah, but if he didn't have us, he wouldn't be all that.
And the Niners were different. They played different than most teams did back then. And they were the only team I could argue that was capable of playing that way, obviously because of Walsh, but Jerry Rice. Mm-hmm. Jerry Rice was that engine. And you saw it. After Montana left, they went to Steve Young. Nothing changed. They were winning Super Bowls. It didn't matter. They were getting to title games. So
do we include Joe Montana?
I think Montana has to be in the discussion, given his legacy is what it is. And the pedigree is what it is. 4 Super Bowls. A very good quarterback, very fortunate for his situation, yes, of course, but I don't think that's a negative. I think I've seen a lot of quarterbacks go into good situations and fail or just not accomplish anything. So, I'll pick and choose that battle maybe later. I want to move to wide receiver. A lot of attention going to Jerry Rice as the clear number 1.
Not only that, but the best player of all time. I don't know if I
don't know how I feel
with
about that. Yeah, I don't agree. I have a take that may not get received well, but it's just not against. Again, I have nothing against Jerry Rice. Growing up, he was everything. He was all the NFL talked about. That's all you knew growing up. My dad would tell me, "Dad, Jerry Rice, unbelievable." I mean, that's the thing. That's a thing. But I do believe Randy Moss and hell. You may not like him, but Terrell Owens deserves to be in the conversation. Calvin Johnson deserves to be in that conversation. I think even, he didn't have maybe as long as a career as others, but Marvin Harrison, for a 13-year stretch, out the gate was a phenomenal wide receiver. I have a tough time just letting Jerry sit at the top of the pedestal just because he played 21 years in the NFL. And amassed all the yards down the stretch with the Raiders, with the Seahawks. Again, if you can shed more light on it than I could. I didn't watch Jerry Rice play. I think there is a conversation to be had about who the best wide receiver is of all time. I don't think the gap is that big, even if the data and the statistics and the touchdowns and the yards all point towards that. The problem is I don't believe there's been a better postseason wide receiver than Jerry Rice, and I think that counts for something too, Terry.
Yeah, that does too. Because one of the, getting back to quarterbacks, one of the blemishes of Peyton Manning was that he did not play well in the playoffs, particularly early in his career. It's like, damn, Peyton didn't see that. He didn't see that linebacker. What's up? So he was a different player in the playoffs than he was in the regular season. So maybe best regular season quarterback of all time, Peyton Manning. But then if you
I think you have to factor everything when you talk about a player's
everything else
career.
In, then it's like you got
Moss
Tom Brady.
never delivered, but again, nobody has delivered as a wide receiver like Jerry Rice did in the postseason. That's just a fact. And I think that holds more weight than even his regular seasons, in my opinion. Tell me if I'm wrong.
It should, but it doesn't.
Super Bowl MVP.
Let's look at baseball. When guys are deciding who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, they never factor in postseason. Barry Bonds is one of the worst postseason players of all time. But the reason that they kept him out from the Hall of Fame wasn't because of his postseason, it was because of the steroids.
There's one player I want to ask you about. Right around the time you were very involved with the Detroit Lions, division opponent, a wide receiver that my older brother, was his favorite player growing up, and he was a Lions fan.
Ooh.
Sterling Sharp.
Yes.
My brother and my father both told me Sterling Sharp was one of the most unguardable wide receivers during his time, and he doesn't get enough love today. Is he a guy we're talking about near the top 10, or is he a top 15, top 20 guy? And by the way, how he's not in the Hall of Fame I think is beyond me, given if you go back and look at his stats, he had a 4 or 5 year period where, again, you could compare his 4 or 5 year stretch to Terrell Davis. He was basically unplayable.
I think the knock against Sterling Sharp, this is wrong. Sterling Sharp didn't talk to the media, and he was kind of rude. And those things factor in. Now, ask me, should they factor in? Absolutely not, but they do. And then I think a lot of people were upset with him. Here's a guy that's kind of surly, doesn't talk to the media, is kind of rude. Then when he retires, what does he do? He gets into the media and wants everybody to talk to him. But
Terry, he retired after getting 1,100 yards and 18 touchdowns his final season. I mean, the guy, yes, I know he only played, 3, 6, 7 seasons. He finished in the top 5 in MVP voting twice. 5-time Pro Bowler. 3-time All-Pro, first-team All-Pro. I mean, come on. That is a Hall of Famer in 7 years. In 7 years. Never missed a game, by the way. Never missed a game.
Well, I think there is a cutoff that some guys are not going to vote for you because if you don't play 10 years, they're not going to vote for you. And if you're not media friendly, they're not going to vote for you.
Andrew Luck gets in the Hall of Fame, yes or no?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to say, knowing the standards for the NFL are not what they are in baseball, they're not what they are in other sports, he will get in. Now, I don't think he get my vote, but I think he will get in. And I know people who vote on the Hall of Fame, and their standards aren't that great. Like, I think Matthew Stafford, even before winning the Super Bowl, was going to get into the Hall of Fame.
I agree with you. My issue with Luck, unfortunately, is you have to factor. I think playing a certain amount of time does matter. I think tenure does matter. I don't think it's everything, though. And if I look at the 6-year period that Andrew Luck was in the NFL, if he played 12 years, right, at his current averages, Terry, he would have had 350-plus touchdowns, 47,000 yards, probably 50,000 yards, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a bona fide Hall of Fame quarterback. So when the day comes, I don't think he's first or even second ballot. But I think by the 3rd, 4th, or 5th time around, eventually he will be let in. And I think that's fair. I really do. I don't have an issue with it.
Okay.
I think he was phenomenal. And again, he took the Colts.
And the other thing is he could run a little bit, too.
We'll have to wait and see.
But, as far as Sterling Sharp, I want to tell you, eyeball, this dude was phenomenal. Not only was he fast, but he was strong. I mean, he was like, he could just throw wide receivers off of him. And the most famous play, the one that killed me, is a playoff game, Green Bay. Lions are actually winning, ready to win their second playoff game. So, for whatever reason, the Lions secondary didn't know what coverage they were in. Some of the guys thought they were in cover 2. Some thought they were in cover 3. And guess who they forgot to guard? Sterling Sharp. And this dude, I swear, the closest person to him were the fans sitting in the first row at the Silverdome. Easy touchdown. Green Bay wins. But, I guess if you want to say he's a stealth bomber, that's what he was, at least for one.
Yeah, again, like some of the comments in the chat, you guys being cynical, I don't think is going to go well at all. If Luck gets in, does Ryan Fitzpatrick get in? No, dipshit. No. Again, I look at that, and when you were in the NFL, were you regarded as one of the best players at your position? Andrew Luck was. And yes, he only played 6 seasons. But for those 6 seasons, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL every single year. Coming out the gate to one of the worst teams in the NFL, by the way. Just a fresh reminder. If you guys don't remember the Peyton Manning surgery, he retires. Well, technically he doesn't retire, but he has to go away, goes to Denver. Andrew Luck takes over an awful situation, by the way. Try taking over for the franchise's greatest quarterback of all time. There are only 2 quarterbacks that I know that have transitioned and it worked out. Rodgers and Luck. Nobody else has taken the baton from an all-time great and done. Maybe Steve Young.
Steve Young.
Steve Young, too, for sure. So it was only a handful of guys.